She was just another passenger waiting for her flight at a crowded airport. She was well-dressed and calm. But to two airport police officers and a wealthy white passenger, her presence, a successful black woman, was an eyesore. She was stopped for no reason and subjected to prejudicial probing questions about her business class ticket and her finances, questions no white passenger should have to face. When she protested, rightly demanding respect and basic civil rights, hell broke loose. She was subjected to vicious insults and slurs aimed directly at her skin color that echoed through the stunned crowd. They shouted at her, threatened her, and then the worst happened. She was handcuffed right there in front of hundreds of people. The woman was treated like a criminal, publicly humiliated, all because of someone else's blind racism and vicious words. But these two policemen, in their arrogance and abuse of power, made a terrible mistake. A mistake that would change their lives forever. They had no idea who the woman they were escorting away really was. She's no ordinary passenger. She holds one of the most powerful positions in the American judicial system. What will happen when the truth comes out at the airport police station? How will the two policemen react when they realize who they have attacked? Will their belated pleas save anything? And what price will they and the person who provoked them pay? Let's follow this dramatic story. The international airport on a Friday afternoon is a symphony of controlled chaos. The loudspeakers blare out flight announcements in perfect English mixed with the various languages of the bustling crowd. The clatter of suitcase wheels on polished marble floors is joined by laughter, ringing phones, and the cries of a few tired children. The air smells of freshly brewed coffee, perfumes of all kinds, fast food, and the constant recycling of air conditioning. On large electronic boards, green and red letters continuously update information on incoming and outgoing flights, a constant flow of movement and connection. At Gate C-14, where Continental Airlines Flight 455 was about to depart for Chicago, a crowd of passengers was gathering. Some were sitting, some were standing, some scrolling through their phones, some reading, all looking a little impatient. Among them, Vanessa Carter stood quite close to the front of the priority passenger line. At nearly 50 years old, she exuded a serious intellectual yet somewhat tired air after finishing an important 3-day legal conference. She wore straight-leg black trousers and a light gray vest over them. Her low-heeled shoes were comfortable but still elegant, suitable for a long flight. No fancy jewelry, just an elegant watch on her wrist, and a good-quality dark brown leather handbag neatly placed on the small suitcase beside her. She was on her way home, looking forward to a quiet weekend. To maintain privacy, she traveled alone without a secretary or security guard accompanying her. While patiently waiting for her turn to board the plane, she took the opportunity to skim through some important documents on her tablet. Not far from Carter in the same line was Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery. In stark contrast to Carter's calm demeanor, Mrs. Montgomery, a white woman in her mid-60s, appeared extremely impatient and annoyed. She was dressed head to toe in designer clothes, with diamonds sparkling on her neck and arms, her face carefully made up but frowning constantly, glancing at her watch and sighing heavily. Her eyes swept the crowd with disdain, lingering for a long time on Carter with a frown of displeasure. In Montgomery's narrow and prejudiced worldview, a black woman could not possibly be in the same priority line as her, could not possibly be eligible to fly business class. She muttered something to her companion, or to herself, loud enough for a few people around her to hear, some insinuations about how the times are crazy and everyone gets priority. Not stopping there, Montgomery decided to take action. She swaggered up to the gate agent's desk, her tone both coquettish and commanding. "Hey you, Why do I have to wait with those people? She jerked her chin toward Carter. Look at her. She looks suspicious. She's been staring at my luggage all this time. I don't feel safe flying with people like that. They must have used fake papers to get into business class. You should check. The young female gate agent was confused and embarrassed by Montgomery's arrogant attitude and baseless discriminatory words. She tried to explain the boarding process and that Carter had full privileges. But Montgomery was not listening and continued to make a fuss. The commotion attracted the attention of two airport police officers patrolling nearby, Officer Mike Thompson and Officer Jason Collins. Thompson, the older of the two, with a weary but seasoned face and a keen but implicitly racist gaze, glanced over the situation. Collins, younger and more aggressive-looking, also approached curiously. Mrs. Montgomery was struck gold when she saw the police. She turned around immediately, her tone changing from commanding to whining, complaining but no less venomous. "Oh, you two police officers, thank goodness. Please help me. That black woman," she pointed at Carter, who was standing silently observing, "looks very suspicious. She keeps looking at me and my bag with strange eyes. I'm really scared to be near her on the plane. Please check her thoroughly. We can't let bad elements on the plane." She skillfully swayed suspicion and unfounded fear, exploiting racial prejudice to achieve her selfish goals. Officer Thompson, with his preconceived notions, almost immediately believed the well-dressed white woman. He looked at Carter with suspicion. Officer Collins, younger and more excitable, quickly joined in, looking at her with hostility. They saw this as an opportunity to exert power and solve the problem in the simplest way, by targeting the accused regardless of the absurdity of the accusation. Officer Thompson and Officer Collins walked straight toward Carter, their gaits somewhat stiff, deliberately creating tension and pressure. The passengers in the waiting line parted reluctantly, watching with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Ma'am," Thompson said first, his voice trying to be neutral but still laced with coercion and disrespect. "Would you please step out of line? We need to talk to you privately." Carter, though surprised by this sudden intervention, maintained her composure. She looked at the two policemen, then glanced quickly at Mrs. Montgomery, who stood nearby with her arms folded and a triumphant half-smile on her face. She understood what was happening. She quietly stepped out of the line as requested. "What is it, officers?" she asked, her voice steady and fearless. "We have received a complaint from another passenger that you are behaving suspiciously and may pose a security risk to the flight," Thompson said bluntly, repeating Montgomery's venom almost verbatim but in a tone that made it sound like a proven fact. "We would like to request your identification and boarding pass for inspection." Carter opened her bag calmly, took out her driver's license and business class boarding pass, and handed them to Thompson. "These are my documents, perfectly valid," she said. "But I want to know what exactly is the suspicious behavior that I'm being accused of, and who made that complaint. I was just standing there waiting to board like any other passenger." Collins, more impatient and aggressive, immediately interjected, "Why do you ask so many questions? If the police ask, just do it. Your attitude is suspicious." Thompson took Carter's papers, glanced at the name and photo, then looked back up at her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, stopping at her formal attire and expensive handbag. "Vanessa Carter," he muttered the name. "Business class," he smirked. "How did someone like you?" He left the sentence hanging, the racial and class slur obvious. "Get this ticket. What do you do for a living? Are you sure this is your ticket?" The blatant insult broke Carter's silence. She felt the blood rush to her face but kept her voice under control. You are speaking to me based on personal prejudice and the slander of others, not on any actual evidence. What class of ticket I travel in or what profession I hold is absolutely none of your business within the bounds of the law. She looked Thompson straight in the eye, then Collins, her voice growing firmer. I am a citizen of the United States, a lawful passenger, and I have the right to be treated with respect and without discrimination. Your questioning, your words, and your attitude are unacceptable and a serious violation of my civil rights and the police code of conduct. She held out her hand. Now I'm going to ask you to return your papers to me, and I want both of your names and badge numbers. Carter's forceful, unflinching defiance and sharp words were a blow to Thompson and Collins' complacency and self-imposed authority. They had grown accustomed to people, especially people of color, being afraid and submissive to uniformed police. This defiance infuriated them. What? You dare to talk nonsense? Collins shouted, his face red, moving menacingly closer to Carter. Who do you think you are? We are the law here. You dare to defy the police. Thompson lost his cool too. His old man face now twisted in anger. You impudent black woman. Who do you think you're talking to? You must be playing dumb lawyer again. I'm telling you, we have the right to do whatever it takes to ensure safety. You don't want to get on this flight anymore. Do you? Or do you want to go to jail? The two police officers began to blatantly curse and openly use racial SL. ChatGPT said, URS, attracting shocked looks and gasps from the crowd. Passengers started recording on their phones. The airline staff looked helpless, not daring to intervene in what they saw as a police matter. Carter's heart pounded. The violation of her dignity, the humiliating public spectacle, the racial hatred hurled at her. Everything seemed unbearable. But she refused to give in to fear or anger. When Collins suddenly grabbed her arm roughly to handcuff her, Carter tried to pull away and resist. You have no right to do this, she shouted. The two officers wrestled her down to the floor, ignoring her protests, while Mrs. Montgomery watched with a smirk of satisfaction. Good riddance, she whispered to herself. The airport security office was a small, cold room filled with harsh fluorescent light and the constant hum of ventilation. Vanessa Carter sat quietly on the metal bench, her hands cuffed but her mind sharp and unbroken. The two officers, Thompson and Collins, paced around, uneasy now that the public eyes had turned on them. Passengers and airport staff whispered and glanced through the glass wall, their phones still recording snippets of the confrontation. Social media was already lighting up with videos titled, Black Woman Handcuffed at Airport? Is this racism? Vanessa's calm defiance had unsettled the officers more than they expected. Thompson sat down heavily at a desk cluttered with paperwork and a half-empty coffee cup. Collins leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her like a hawk. Thompson finally broke the silence. Look, Miss Carter, if you cooperate, this can all be sorted quickly. The complaint is serious. Threatening passengers is no joke. Vanessa looked at him, steady and firm. You have no evidence to support that claim. Mrs. Montgomery's baseless accusation is just that, baseless. You arrested me without cause. Collins scoffed. You expect us to just take your word? You know how things look around here. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. I expect you to do your job professionally and fairly. Your job is to protect, not to abuse your power or act on racial bias. The door creaked open, and a middle-aged man in a dark suit entered. His name was James Reynolds, the airport's chief security officer. He held a tablet in his hand and a serious expression. Officers Thompson and Collins, I've been reviewing the boarding records and security footage, Reynolds said, voice steady. Ms. Carter, may I speak with you for a moment? Vanessa nodded, relieved at the intervention. Reynolds turned to Thompson and Collins. We have confirmation from Continental Airlines that Ms. Carter's boarding pass is authentic. She checked in properly, her ticket is valid, and security footage confirms she boarded the business class lounge without incident. Thompson and Collins exchanged uneasy glances. Reynolds continued, moreover, the complaint from Mrs. Montgomery was reviewed. Surveillance footage shows Mrs. Montgomery glaring and whispering aggressively toward Ms. Carter, with no evidence of threatening behavior from Ms. Carter. The officers' faces flushed. The weight of their misconduct began to settle in. Reynolds addressed them firmly. This incident is a serious violation of civil rights and airport protocol. You will be reporting this case to Internal Affairs immediately. Vanessa stood up, flexing her wrists as the cuffs were removed. I expect a formal apology and full accountability for this abuse of power, she said coldly. As Reynolds led Vanessa out of the office, Thompson muttered, This is going to cost us. Collins stayed behind, his jaw tight, the first seeds of doubt and regret settling into his mind. Outside the airport, Vanessa's phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages. News outlets were eager to interview her. She held a press conference right there, sharing her story with the world. She spoke about racial profiling, abuse of authority, and the need for systemic change. Her voice was calm but passionate, an unyielding call for justice. The incident sparked a public outcry. Social media erupted with hashtags like #JusticeForVanessa, #StopRacialProfiling, and #PoliceAccountability. Meanwhile, Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery found herself isolated, facing backlash from fellow passengers and the airport community. Her privileged status couldn't shield her from public condemnation. Back at the police department, Thompson and Collins sat in separate interrogation rooms, each facing questions from internal affairs investigators. The officers' arrogance dissolved under scrutiny, replaced by fear of losing their jobs and facing legal consequences. For Collins, the experience was transformative. His initial anger turned to remorse as he reflected on his actions and the deep injustices ingrained in the system. Vanessa Carter returned home that evening, exhausted but determined. She knew the fight for justice was far from over, not just for herself but for every person subjected to discrimination. Her story was not just about one incident. It was a call to action, a beacon for Chong. The city was waking up to a new reality. Headlines across newspapers and digital media shouted about the airport incident. Black woman wrongfully detained. Security officers under investigation. Public outcry over racial profiling. Vanessa Carter sat in her living room, surrounded by stacks of letters and messages from supporters, activists, lawyers, and ordinary citizens touched by her story. Her phone buzzed continuously with invitations to speak at panels, community meetings, and even a local TV interview. But despite the overwhelming attention, Vanessa remained focused on one thing: change. At the police internal affairs office, officers Thompson and Collins faced the consequences. Thompson, defensive and angry, refused to admit fault. Collins, however, after long hours of questioning and reflection, finally broke down. I was wrong, Collins confessed quietly. I let my biases get in the way. I didn't think about the damage I caused. I want to make it right. The investigators nodded gravely. Collins agreed to attend sensitivity training and commit to community outreach programs aimed at rebuilding trust. Thompson's fate was harsher. His refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing led to suspension and pending disciplinary action. The department made it clear this was a turning point. Back at the airport, James Reynolds held a press conference. He announced sweeping changes to security procedures, including mandatory anti-bias training for all staff and an independent oversight committee to handle future complaints. "We owe the public transparency and respect," Reynolds declared. "No one should ever be treated like Ms. Carter was." Vanessa's voice resonated through a community forum held in a local church. Surrounded by faces eager for justice, she spoke not just about her ordeal, but about the broader fight against systemic racism. "We must hold institutions accountable," Vanessa urged. "But we must also change hearts and minds. This isn't just a fight for Black people. It's a fight for humanity." Her words were met with standing ovations, tears, and renewed hope. Later that evening, Vanessa sat quietly on her porch, reflecting on the journey. Her phone chimed, a message from Officer Collins. "Thank you for your courage. You opened my eyes. I want to do better." She smiled softly, knowing change was slow but possible. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and meaningful stories like this. Hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to watch our latest videos, where we share real journeys of resilience, justice, and hope in the face of adversity. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because every story becomes stronger when more voices join in. Subscribe now and let's spread truth, compassion, and the strength of the human spirit together.